Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alexia Tasouli. I'm a journalist, and I have the honor today to have a discussion with the Ambassador of the United States in Athens, Mr. Geoffrey Pyatt, a discussion which I believe is going to be very interesting and very newsworthy. Good afternoon, Mr. Ambassador, and welcome to the Delphi Economic Forum. Let me start our discussion today on Libya. The Greek government is following very closely the developments in Libya. Yesterday, Greece signed an agreement with Italy on the exclusive economic zone, which may lead to future agreements, for example, with Egypt. So I would like to ask you, how do you see Greece's position in this area so far and its role that Greece is having in the area? And regarding the memorandum that Turkey signed with Libya, do you believe that this memorandum and Turkey's role is helpful or destabilizing?
Well, thanks, Alexia. It's great to continue our conversation from Thessaloniki, and I'm delighted to be participating in my fourth Delphi Forum, even if we're not in Delphi. Thank you for raising the question, because it brings together several important issues that connect to the United States' resolve to engage with Greece as a key regional partner and a bringer of stability to the region. You asked about the Italy agreement. We see the Greece-Italy agreement on maritime delimitation as an example of the right way to do this sort of thing, transparently and with the involvement of all the affected parties. You also asked about the role we see for Greece in Libya. On that, I was very pleased 2 weeks ago to be part of a conversation that Foreign Minister Dendias had with our ambassador to Libya, my friend and colleague Dick Norland. And it was very clear in that conversation that there is a strong convergence between Greek and American views on what needs to happen in Libya.
So we have an agreement, and Turkey signed a memorandum with Libya. So my question was about, do you think that Turkey's role in Libya, in the area, after they signed the agreement, Turkey with Libya, is this agreement and the role of Turkey that's playing is destabilizing or is helpful for the negotiations?
So we have made very clear, both here in Athens and in Washington and in Ankara, that we see the MOU between Libya and Turkey as unhelpful and provocative. Most importantly, it is inconsistent with the American understanding of international maritime law, and specifically the principle that islands have exactly the same rights in terms of EEZs and maritime rights as any continental territory. So we look to the example of Greece-Italy as the right way to do this, through consultation with all of the affected parties. And we see Greece as having an important and constructive influence to play in Libya, including through its leadership of Operation Irini, the EU mission to enforce the arms embargo on Libya, where Greece plays a leading role, and where, in fact, the next commanding officer of that operation will be a Greek naval officer who was previously in charge of the Suda naval base. So we know him very well.
And you're planning to go to Suda on Thursday, actually.
I will be in Suda tomorrow with both Minister Paniatopoulos and with General Floros. Looking forward to it very much.
In a possible agreement with Egypt, Greece and Egypt, with a full or partial delimitation, do you think that this agreement will enhance the geopolitical security and stability in the area?
So the United States generally doesn't take a position on these issues of maritime delimitation, but we have a view on how it needs to be accomplished. So it needs to be accomplished through consultation and the involvement of all of the affected parties. And again, that's where the Italy-Greece example is one that we hope will be followed by all of the parties of the Eastern Mediterranean. You know, we have put a lot of energy in the United States government into thinking about the Eastern Mediterranean as a zone of strategic competition. Our great power rivals are strongly engaged. We are trying to build a cooperative architecture on all of the issues, on energy, on migration, on counterterrorism, where we should all be working together as allies and partners. The anchor for that, for the United States, is the 3+1 trilateral with Greece, Israel, Cyprus that my boss, Secretary of State Pompeo, helped to launch in Jerusalem a little more than a year ago.
If the memorandum of Turkey and Libya will be posted in the UN website, will that change the fact that it's illegal or, for, as you said, provocative?
It is unhelpful and provocative in any terms, but most importantly, it can take away no rights from Greece. Whether this document is posted to the United Nations or not, it does not detract from the rights that Greece possesses still under international maritime law.
Right. Let's move now to another subject. You said that in a possible escalation between Greece and Turkey, the winner will be the president of Russia. And there was a response from the Russian embassy here in Athens.
I noticed.
You noticed that. Can you please elaborate more why and how the president of Russia will be the winner in a possible escalation with our neighbors?
So let me say a couple of things. First of all, as a general principle, I found it's good not to personalize these kind of issues. Obviously, the United States and the government of Russia have different perspectives on this. I was quite impressed by the reaction among mainstream Greek media to my comments, where most of your colleagues in the Greek media basically said, well, he's pointing out something that's obvious. And clearly, Russia has been quite direct over the past decade about its desire to weaken coherence in the NATO alliance. We've seen the great difficulties, for instance, that Russia's sale of the S-400 system to Turkey has caused both to Greece's strategic calculations, but also to the U.S.-Turkey relationship. So we see these issues as ones where we as allies need to work together. And I think the reaction, the Russian reaction to my comments, and you saw the response to that the embassy put out with a long list of Russian malign activities, which I have lived through over the past 6 or 7 years. I think that speaks for itself.
Right. Let me go back to the exclusive economic zone that we discussed in the beginning. That you have made a statement that, and the State Department has also made this statement, that the islands generally have an exclusive economic zone and they have a continental shelf, just any other land territory. You made the statement, Mr. Fanon also made that statement. Let me be more specific and ask you a specific question. You mean that all the islands, from Rhavdos to Castellorizo, have full effect in maritime boundary delimitation? Let me clear about that. And to add that in that question, you also know that there has been an annoyance from the Turkish ambassador here in Athens, who posted a tweet and in Facebook that he said that the third parties that are involved in the Greek-Turkish dispute, they are misleading. It was widely said here in Athens in the media that he was referring to the State Department. So I would like a comment on both things.
So let me answer with two separate pieces. I will leave the question of U.S.-Turkey relations to my very capable colleague, David Satterfield, in Ankara. But the views of the U.S. government have been clear. And I said this first way back in December, soon after the MOU was signed. We have reiterated it, and Assistant Secretary Fanon made clear again last week, that all islands have the same, under international maritime law, have generally the same rights, including their EEZ and continental shelf, as any mainland territory.
So they have full effect in a maritime boundary agreement?
Full effect.
Full effect, right. And what about the annoyance of the Turkish ambassador?
Yeah, I'll leave that to Ambassador Satterfield.
Right. Okay. Now, allow me to move on to the United States, because yesterday we had the funeral of George Floyd. That was caused a global outrage, very much discussion. And yesterday was a funeral, and the protests were very, very powerful back there. What impact might have this event in the next day of the U.S. citizens?
No, well, thank you for asking, and it's a really important question. I'll start by underlining that I think all of us, all Americans, were appalled by the images that we saw of the death of George Floyd in police custody. But this was not just about one individual. And the demonstrations, the peaceful protests that you have seen across the United States over the past week or 10 days now, are not just about this one individual. It's about the system and how to achieve systemic reform. Many of these are issues that go back 150 years to our Civil War. They are issues where we have continuing work to do to perfect our democracy. I was reminded yesterday, I had the honor of going to see the president of your parliament. And I always enjoy talking with him because he's a walking encyclopedia of Greek political history. And he talked to me about a letter that was sent, I guess almost 55 years ago from President Johnson.
To whom?
It was to the president of Turkey. On the Cyprus problem. Mm-hmm. But what's really interesting is that letter was sent the same week as the passage of the Voting Rights Act in the US Congress in 1964. It was one of the most important single pieces of legislation up until that point in terms of helping to build a system of equal justice for all, which is what our Constitution promises. And it was a reminder that even at this very tumultuous time in US history, we are still a global power with global responsibilities and global engagement. And I think that applies just as much today as it did under President Johnson 55 years ago. I also think if you look back to where we were in 1964, the United States has made great progress. 12 years ago, we elected our first African-American president. Mm-hmm. That was unimaginable in 1964. We have enormous injustice that still has to be overcome. And I think what's really interesting about the demonstrations you've seen in America recently is that this is not a partisan issue. These are people from all classes, from all backgrounds, and across the political spectrum. But they are saying we need to live up to our ideals. And that's the great strength of America. We have a society in which the freedom of expression is a constitutionally protected principle, a society in which we all enjoy the right to vote, in part because of that act under President Johnson in 1964, and a society in which we continue to work to overcome the shortcomings, which we will admit to. And I think also, if you look at the wave of protests across the United States and look at the statements that are coming from our mayors, from our local leaders, from our governors, American democracy is alive and well and will be stronger because of this experience.
Right. Let's move on energy issues now. I know that you follow them very closely, the energy matters. And let me ask about EastMed and how do you see this project is developing? I remember Mr. Pompeo, he visited Israel, he signed this memorandum with Israel and Cyprus, and Greece, of course. How do you see this project is developing?
So you and I talked about this in Thessaloniki last fall, and energy has been one of the real bright spots of the U.S.-Greece relationship over the past few years. I think it's fantastically impressive to see how fast Greece has emerged as a key regional energy hub. The TAP pipeline today is completed. The IGB pipeline with Bulgaria is underway. The Revithusa terminal here in Athens has been expanded and is now receiving American LNG. We're moving ahead strongly with the implementation of the floating regasification unit, the FSRU in Alexandroupoli. All of these pieces of new infrastructure help to build resilience for the European energy market. They help to build and reinforce diversity of sources and supply. The EastMed pipeline is another potential contributor to that. We have been very clear in our support for the pipeline as a strategic enterprise, but we've also been clear that the market will decide. Right now, markets and energy markets have been heavily disrupted by the combination of both the price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia, and also the decline in demand because of the coronavirus.
Since you mentioned Russia, we have seen recently Gazprom interest in the Balkans, in the area, in our country with corporations. How do you see their interest and their initiatives with corporations in the Balkans?
So I would describe Gazprom's activity in the Balkans as going well beyond interest. The Balkan Energy Island, these are countries that are 100% dependent on Gazprom for their gas supplies. Bulgaria recently took its first deliveries of American LNG through Greece. And I have a very good colleague, Hira Mustafa, who is our ambassador in Sofia. She's worked closely with President Borisov, who we got to speak to when we were in Thessaloniki together. And he has made clear his interest in leveraging the relationship with Greece and the IGB pipeline to break his dependency on Gazprom. We see Russia across Europe using energy as a strategic weapon, and Greece's contribution, like the contribution of Poland, like other countries that have helped to diversify energy sources and supplies, is to create optionality so that the markets will influence this. And the good thing for Greece is, because of all this infrastructure that has come online over the past 2 or 3 years, Gazprom is forced to compete. And the price that it is offering to Greek customers has declined substantially. So it benefits you economically.
Right. Unfortunately, our time is over. That was very quick, but it was very helpful and very honored to have a discussion with you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for participating and having this discussion in the Delphi Economic Forum.
Thank you, Alexia, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Me too. Thank you.